So there's a new Zodiac story going around about a team of independent investigators who have identified a suspect they believe is the Zodiac killer. I was planning to make a video about the last time a Zodiac story made a splash, which was about 6 months ago. That one was about a French engineer who got a lot of attention for his attempts to crack 2 more of Zodiac's unsolved ciphers. I decided to put that video on hold for now so I can briefly address the current story. On Wednesday, October 6th, an article broke on Fox News about a team of 40 former law enforcement investigators, journalists, and military intelligence officers who claim to have identified a man named Gary Francis Post as the Zodiac killer. The team is called the Case Breakers. Here's one of their members, Jennifer Buchholz.
Nobody with the Case Breakers gets paid. We're all volunteers, but we're just out there to get answers for these victims' families.
They think the killing of Sherry Jo Bates was done by their suspect, so they want the Riverside Police Department to do a DNA comparison.
So the unknown foreign DNA sample they already have and or a potential DNA sample off that wristwatch could be compared to Gary Post's DNA, but they've refused to do so. And that's part of the reason that we've gone to the media at this point.
They published a press release which sketches out some of their evidence, and all the information in the Fox News article comes directly from the group and their press release. Since the article was put out there by Fox News at a national level, it quickly got a lot of attention and began spreading to other outlets. Now, many people are reacting as if the case is finally solved. Is it though? The reactions on the Zodiac message boards and social media have been mostly negative. Responses range from mild skepticism to derisive ridicule. Most of the active people on those forums following the case have looked at the Case Breakers' claims, and the overall impression is that the evidence is not good, or no better than the evidence for the other numerous suspects that have been picked through over the years. In response, Buchholz pushed back. "People don't want to be proved wrong," she told the Press Democrat on Wednesday. "I get it. They've put in a lot of effort, but all we're saying is just wait until we get the rest of the information." So they're digging their heels in, just as many others have done when faced with criticisms about their suspects and theories. This is a pattern that keeps coming up in the history of this case. Suspects weave in and out of the news cycle, but never get confirmed by law enforcement. Back in 1991, a lawyer accused his brother of being Zodiac. In 2007, Dennis Kaufman accused his stepfather, Jack Tarrance. Then in 2009, Deborah Perez staged a press conference and claimed her father was Zodiac. In 2014, Gary Stewart made the rounds for his book about discovering his biological father was Zodiac. The Zodiac case followers on the forums aren't the only ones who are skeptical about this latest suspect. After the Case Breakers story spread, various law enforcement agencies refuted the story that the case was solved, or simply remained neutral about the suspect.
What are police saying now that you guys have claimed that you've got the guy?
Well, I mean, obviously they're resistant, and it's an issue that we run into with cases all the time, where law enforcement unfortunately does not want to accept outside help or outside theories from, a bunch of civilians.
Today, the FBI told me the Zodiac killer case remains open and that there is no new information to share. I got the same response from Vallejo Police and the SFPD.
Here's an official statement from the FBI. The FBI's investigation into the Zodiac killer remains open and unsolved. Due to the ongoing nature of the investigation and out of respect for the victims and their families, we will not be providing further comment at this time. NBC reported that the FBI rebuts the claim that the case is solved. The San Francisco Police Department said, "We are unable to speak to potential suspects as this is still an open investigation." Here's the response from the Vallejo Police Department. A Vallejo police spokesperson said the department could neither confirm nor deny Wednesday's report from the Case Breakers and added that they would announce any major developments. Riverside Police, on the other hand, had some even stronger things to say about the Case Breakers. Is there a chance that the Case Breakers suspect killed Sherry Jo Bates? No, Riverside Police Officer Ryan Railsback told the Chronicle. If you read what they put out, it's all circumstantial evidence. It's not a whole lot.
He's a management entertainment attorney for Case Breakers. He was the guy emailing us very insistent about the reward. We're working with the FBI, not retired FBI.
Unfortunately, their response all along has been, we already are positive that Sherry Jo Bates' murder had nothing to do with the Zodiac.
Okay, so they're getting the wet blanket treatment from just about everyone. Why? What does their evidence look like? Here's Tom Colbert, co-founder of the Case Breakers team.
We realize this team is making history. we have evidence that is out the kazoo. It's amazing. I mean, we have tons of evidence.
They claim to have witnesses to confessions.
We have 6 people that he told towards his last years that he was the Zodiac.
6 people that he's confessed to that he was the Zodiac. 3 of them on our court affidavits.
The team also claims that one witness that spoke to them said that he saw Post bearing weapons in the woods. This is one of the comments on the Casebreakers team's website from someone named DC, which I think might be co-founder Donna Colbert. The buried guns are in a remote location that requires a chopper, and we are in the process of arranging. We are hoping to get the departments to cooperate and compare the DNA as per our previous requests. The team also believes they have a shoe size match.
We have at least a size 10 boot or shoes, and those boots, in fact, had military-type treads on the bottom. He was, in fact, in the military.
There's also the watch found at the Bates crime scene. It's thought to have been purchased on a military base, and Post was an Air Force veteran. The team says paint was found on the watch, and Post was a house painter. The team also says Post had brown hair, and brown hairs were also found in Bates' clenched fist. Then there's the claim about scars on Zodiac's forehead.
The group says Post had scars on his forehead from a car crash that matched scars on a sketch of the Zodiac.
That is irrefutable. That is a mark that's the same. It's on him all the way to his death at 80 years old. The scar itself is what caught everyone, especially my FBI guys on the team, who are very difficult to please. And they're not impressed. But for them to say it's irrefutable, that's the first time they use that word.
They claim that Post recruited people.
At least 3 people, now adults, but as young men, our friend GFP recruited them and essentially became somewhat of a father figure. They speak of the many years of terrifying activities that they eventually saw.
They say they have pictures from Post's former darkroom, including this so-called selfie the killer took while wearing the Lake Berryessa hood. And finally, they have decipherments of the Zodiac's letters, cards, and ciphers that allegedly produced the suspect's name, as well as detailed instructions on where to find evidence related to the crimes. So that's their evidence. A lot of it's circumstantial and could be dismissed as coincidences, and much of it relies on a connection between Zodiac and the Sherry Jo Bates case. But the Riverside Police Department has very strongly said there is no such connection. They say Zodiac did not kill Bates. The remaining evidence is their decipherments, which I'll dive into in a bit. All in all, the evidence does not appear to be very strong. It also seems to be missing some really important details, like handwriting samples and connections between the suspect and the crime locations. Where did this suspect come from in the first place? The team's attention on Gary Francis Post originated with a news anchor named Dale Julin, who received a tip about the suspect. He was a news anchor for many years in California, then more recently in Savannah, Georgia. In 1994, he won the Peabody Award for one of the stories he reported on. A few years ago, Julin contacted fellow Casebreakers team member Jennifer Buchholz to show her the book manuscript he had developed.
So he actually reached out to me, said he'd done a bunch of research over the years and written a manuscript, and he felt he'd identified the man who was responsible for the Zodiac killing. It's got to be Gary Francis Post.
I've tried to ask Buchholz and Julin to share examples of their decryption methods, but they continue to refuse, presumably because Julin hasn't published his book yet, or they're saving them for a documentary, or they're trying to use them as leverage to get law enforcement to do something. The team has only made some vague statements about how anagramming was used to produce messages from Zodiac's letters, ciphers, and postcards. But recently, the Tahoe Daily Tribute published some examples of the decryptions from a copy of Julin's yet-to-be-published manuscript. Some decipherments are in the article, but no details on the exact methods used. The article says, he spent years poring over anagrams. He'd spend time at his anchor's desk before reporting the news, trying to solve the ciphers. His decryptions include macabre directions to the location of Donna Lass's body. Donna Lass was a nurse in Lake Tahoe who went missing in 1970. Zodiac mailed a card the following year, which appeared to take credit for her disappearance. The article doesn't explain his exact process, but it shows some examples of his decryptions. Here's his decryption of Zodiac's 13-hole punch card sent October 5, 1970. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Nurse Donna Lass's out-of-joint icy body is 13 yards high up in a bear cache mark Big Pine Tree. Go magnetic north to compass bearing 85 degrees southeast, 1970 implicit feet from the MS Dixie port at Zephyr Cove to historic Lincoln Center. Collect telephone trunk call. Who? Gary Francis Post. Apparently, his decryption is an anagram of the punch card's original messages. An anagram is just when you take some text and rearrange the letters to make some other text. For example, the letters in Margaret Thatcher can be rearranged to say, that great charmer. Or you can rearrange slot machines to cash lost in me. Clint Eastwood can be rearranged to Old West action. Anagrams are fun, but in those examples, they aren't secret messages. They weren't put there on purpose by someone. They just appear by chance. Even for a short piece of text like Clint Eastwood, there are almost 22 billion different ways to rearrange the letters. Other words and phrases will show in many of those rearrangements. So, the total number of possible rearrangements of Clint Eastwood is almost 22 billion. A pretty big number. But how many rearrangements are possible for the text of the hole punch card? It is this incomprehensibly massive number that takes 444 digits just to write down. This means the chances of finding full sentences are very high, and you could rearrange Zodiac's messages to make your own messages very easily. I think that is what Julian has done with his code work, but he's convinced himself that the secret messages are real and not just coming from his own imagination. One way to look at it is like this. Imagine you have a painting and an empty artist's palette. Suddenly you have the ability to take the paint out of the painting and put it back into the artist's palette. So all the original paint is available again. Then you paint a new painting with the same paint. You basically made the second painting yourself. It was not a secret picture hiding in the original. Anagramming the Zodiac messages is very similar. You can take all the letters and put them in your palette, then rearrange them into a new message. But you created it. It wasn't hiding in the original message. For example, let's look at the message from the hole punch card again. What if I thought the Unabomber was the Zodiac killer? So let's find a hidden message from the Unabomber. First, take all the letters from Zodiac's message and put them in our artist's palette. Basically, a pile of all the available letters. Now we can rearrange them into this text with only a handful of letters left over. This text comes from the Unabomber's manifesto. So if I wanted to promote the Unabomber as a Zodiac suspect, I could claim he was hiding a very early version of his manifesto in the hole punch card. Of course, this would be ridiculous, because I can invent so many other messages out of the letters this way. This couldn't possibly be a real secret message hiding in Zodiac's text, just like that second painting couldn't have been hiding in the first. Still, to be fair, I don't know Julian's exact decryption method. Maybe it's more systematic. The Casebreakers team refers to using the suspect's full name as a key by first removing the letters of his full name from the Zodiac text.
Each letter is actually an anagram, which means you have to take all the letters and numbers out of each message that he sent in and rearrange them into the actual message that he's trying to convey. The problem is, even if they'd realized that back in the day, you need Gary's full name in order to decrypt each code. His full name is the cipher key. Oh my gosh, if I take Gary Francis Post's letters out of this message, what can I make it into? And sure enough, he, over the years, decrypted most of those taunting letters and got the actual messages.
But even if we do that, it only removes a few letters out of our palette of letters, and we can still paint many interesting pictures with them. So I think the Casebreakers team needs to show us that they aren't just inventing their own stories using Zodiac's correspondences. Buchholz also says our decryption of the 340 is correct, but there's an anagram that still needs to be decrypted from it. She says Post's full name is in the last third of it, just like all his other anagrammed letters. But they don't show this, so we have to guess how they found Gary's name. So here's the 340 decryption. If we look towards the bottom third of the text, we can find Gary's name like this. Here are the letters from Gary, then Francis, and then his last name, Post. But again, we have a big palette to work from, which we can use to find many names. For example, can we find the name of Zodiac suspect Arthur Lee Allen? Well, here are the letters in Arthur, then Lee, and Allen. We can find tons of names this way. I think some people get caught up with excitement when they find stuff like this in Zodiac's ciphers and messages. They think there's some design to it, but there are many ways to make messages appear that aren't really there. Then there's this thing about how they found the name in the cipher with the stamp.
The killer claimed his name would be hidden in the symbols.
His name is Post. He ended it with the stamp, and they couldn't figure out his last name. He cleverly used the post markings as Gary Francis Stamp. Post.
There's not much I can do to evaluate what he's saying there. They would have to show their work, which they're unwilling to do. In fact, Buchholz simply challenges us to try to reach the same answers that Julian did.
I'm not going to go into the specific messages that Dale decoded, but, everybody knows now a cipher key, so they're welcome to go ahead and give it a crack and see if they can come to the same conclusions that Dale did and be led to an actual evidence site by decoding those letters.
This is remarkable to me. Instead of showing their work for verification, they want us to reproduce it from thin air. I believe they have shown their decipherment work to the cryptanalysis unit at the FBI, but so far they've been unresponsive. That's probably not a good sign about the validity of the decipherments. Longtime Zodiac Killer reporter Kevin Fagan of the San Francisco Chronicle also expressed his doubts.
I got an email 2 weeks ago saying that they found Herb Cain's name in the anagram, so Herb Cain must be the Zodiac. Before that, it was Charlie Manson.
So far, I can't see anything about their suspect, their evidence, and their decipherment work that would elevate their suspect above all the others that have come before. Either they don't have any really good evidence, or they're holding it back for a book or documentary. By now, every jurisdiction of the Zodiac case has pushed back on their suspect. That includes the San Francisco Police Department, Riverside Police Department, Vallejo Police Department, and the FBI. I think the Casebreakers team has an obligation to demonstrate why they deserve the intense media attention they've been getting over the last few days. So that's it for this episode. I'll post a follow-up if more info about their decipherment methods comes out. As always, thanks for watching. Please help out the channel by clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel, sharing the video, and leaving comments. See you next time.